Welcome to another Unreal Foos tutorial. Today I want to show you a firewall brush series. And this is actually the series that I used during tournaments. And it's mainly composed of 3 passes with some extra options, but the majority of the passes are the following 3. Since we're doing a firewall series, the first thing we want to get into the habit of doing is putting this 3-bar up against the top wall. I typically rotate the guys just a little bit. That helps me catch wall passes a little bit better. It helps trap the ball. If it's back, it may hit your guy and you might lose the ball. So I typically get into the habit of having the guys tilted a little bit. Also, when I catch lane passes, I typically do that, and it helps me kind of trap the ball. So if it's like this, it might just hit your guy and bounce back. So I typically have my guys at an angle forward. So get into the habit of doing that. Keep him there. Anytime you do a wall pass, again, this guy should just stay stationary. Try not to flinch or anything. So just stay there. The next thing we want to do is we want to go into our setup. And so when you go into your setup, and you're basically going to be moving the ball back and forth between this top 2 guys. Sometimes you might want to go to the 3rd guy and readjust, but for the most part, you'll go into this movement, and you're going to have basically the function of these 2 guys moving back and forth is to move the ball so that it gets at the right angle for you to do a brush. So what that means is that depending on the characteristics of your table, on this particular table, the brush angle, it's actually a little bit far back. The ball has to be a little bit far back in order to do that brush. On other tables that seem to be a little bit more sticky or that it's more grippy, if you have the ball back, when you try to do your brush, you actually end up stubbing the ball. So if it's too far back, when you try to do it, you'll almost end up pinching the ball up against the surface, and you're gonna stub it like that. So you gotta play around with the type of table and make an adjustment. In this case, on this tornado table, I can have the ball far back, and it also depends on how new and old the ball is, but it can be back a pretty good amount. And once it's there, all I'm doing is trying to move this ball so it's at the right spot, and then I go on top of it with the last guy, and then I try to read the defense and see what's open. But once it's there, once I think I have a good position of the ball to where I'm gonna get a good brush, then I can start executing my passes. Okay, before I show you all the passing options, I want to talk about the spot at where you should execute your brush up and your brush down. Typically, you want to get into the habit of picking the same spot so that you don't develop any tells in terms of when you go to the wall or when you go to the lane. Sometimes players will develop a bad habit of brushing towards the wall when the ball gets closer to the wall. So if it's like that, once it gets there, then they'll go to the wall, and when the wall is not as far deep, it's hanging out more over here, then they'll go to the lane. So you don't want to do that, because then it makes it easier to block, because as soon as the ball passes a certain spot, you know that most likely you're going to go to the wall. So you really want to get into the habit of picking a good spot. For the most part, could be right in between these 2 guys. My preference is to do it a little bit closer to this guy, because that gives me the ability to do a deep wall pass, and also to do a deep lane pass. So if the ball is right there, if I'm passing at this angle, if I see that this guy is not, he's not coming out and trying to block this lane way out here, then it's easier to, at this point, to go to the lane. And even if they're all the way up against even if they're all the way up against the wall, I can still brush through the lane. But again, you know, my preference is to basically do it at that point. That opens up a good lane, but and it gives me a deep wall pass. But at the same time, that third pass, that hesitation pass, is when I'm out here, it's a lot easier to do, because as soon as it hits my second guy and the ball starts moving that way, then I can go to my hesitation pass. So it kind of disguises this series a little bit better. So let me jump in and do, let me show you the brush down. Go into your setup, wait for that, and one of the things you'll notice is that when I'm doing my setup, I typically, as soon as it hits my second guy here, I usually bring the 5-bar against, and I kind of tap it up against the bumper, and that kind of lets me know, you know, at what point I'm going to be able to brush. It kind of gives me an indication of, okay, where is the ball in this whole process here. So if it hits here, and I'm as soon as it hits my second guy and I'm bumping and the ball hasn't even reached my guy, I know that I can't brush here, so I kind of gotta let it go. And at this point, I'm kind of hovering on top, and I know that once it kind of passes the second guy here, then I pretty much reached the spot where I'm gonna brush. So at that point, you know, I'm the whole time that this ball hits this guy and it's moving, and I'm kind of waiting for that, I'm also reading the defense and trying to get a good feel to, you know, what hole is going to be open. So you know, let's say I'm gonna do a brush down. So I'm gonna go wall. I'm setting up the pass here like that, then I can go. So again, it's very important to get to set up the ball so that it's at the right spot to be able to get a good pinch and make the ball, you know, go at a good angle towards the wall. So that's the brush down. Now again, of that same setup, I want to go to my brush up. I go into the same setup, you know, check it a little bit, kind of wait for that ball to get there. You know, I don't have to exaggerate that bump against the wall down here as much, but sometimes I'll do that just to get an idea, at least the very first time, you know, and then once I go back to it, I don't have to do it, because I have a good feel of where the ball's going to be. So as soon as I'm moving it, then I can go to that pass. And again, for me, I typically do, this is one of my better passes, is my brush to the wall, and I do it very fast. And I've gotten used to doing it really fast. You don't have to do it as fast. If you do it slower, you just have to get into the habit of once you go to the lane, as soon as you execute the pass, then you gotta get into the habit of bringing that guy over and meeting the ball like that. But for me, my passes are always fast, and I usually like to do them with a lot of power. So you'll notice that I'll do that, and I'll put a lot of pressure here. Try to do it like that. But again, that's just my preference. That's how I kind of learned it, and kind of what I got used to. But again, you know, if you do it a little bit softer, it's not a bad thing. Actually, it may kind of help sometimes, so that the ball doesn't hit the back of the guy and jumps up. Sometimes if I hit it too hard, and you know, and I don't go forward enough, it might hit my guy and go back. But you know, that's just one of those things that you practice. I've gotten into the habit of just hitting it, you know, really hard like that. So again, so that's the brush down and the brush up. And again, the hesitation passes off that same setup. I want to do the exact same thing, so that it's not a giveaway of what, you know, whether I'm going to go to that hesitation pass. I'm doing this setup, and I'm trying to do it as quickly as possible. As soon as it hits, everything's predicated by when the ball hits the second guy, because you know, all these passes and all these reactions are split-second reactions. So if I'm going here, notice how as soon as it hits my second guy, I'm already ready I go quickly so that this guy is already behind the wall and just waiting and ready to do my pass. So if I'm here and I've done, I'll try to work my brush ups, my brush downs, and once in a while just to throw off the defense. Especially if I've done some brush ups and they're very conscious of trying to, take away that lane. I can go to that hesitation pass. So if I'm here, I can do that. I can do it in different ways of setting it up. Again, with the hesitation pass, you don't move, you just stay against the wall. And even sometimes, this pass, when you see people that are trying to maybe bait if they're staying up against the wall and trying to bait lanes, you can go into that setup. And even when it looks like they're just going to stay wall, doing that hesitation wall actually gets people off the wall, because they're sort of waiting, and as soon as you do a movement, the reaction is to move to the lane and get out of the wall. So, if somebody were to stay there, assume that they're up against the wall, and as soon as I do a movement, they're gonna bail out. And, I'm here, and I can go up against the, I can go up against the wall and get them off the wall. Okay, so I recommend that if you do this firewall brush series, try to stick to just doing brush down, brush up, and hesitation for the majority of the time. But for purposes of this tutorial, I'll show you a few other options that I incorporate into this series. Okay, one of those options is if I see this 5-bar being greedy with the wall, as I'm doing this, when I'm resetting and bringing the ball back, I do that 2-man stick like that. And notice that I don't have to move the 3-bar. I'm just basically going from this 2-man to this middle guy. I typically don't do it like that. Typically what I'll do is I'll actually brush it down from here to here. So I'm actually doing more of a brush from this 2 guy to this guy, and maybe the reason why I do that is just because it'll give me a bigger, a bigger angle to pass on. If this person happens to maybe move a little bit, I may actually end up with this stick pass. I may be able to go through, or if they move just a little bit, it may hit the guy, and I'll lose the pass. So, but if you actually do a brush like that, then it gives you more, a bigger amount of space here to go through. So I'll do it that way. I'll do that brush here. Again, I'll just kind of sell it. If I see it being greedy, I'll do that pass. So that's a variation of almost the same pass going from here to here. The other option is basically to go off the wall, do an off the wall pass. So if you're here, and it's kind of another option for that, since the fact that you're doing hesitation walls may make people race you to the wall. If you're here, you can do that. And that pass is basically, as soon as you do that, you're bringing the ball back from here, letting it bounce off the wall, and then catching it on the lane. So that's a bounce pass. That used to be one of my favorite passes, but it takes a little bit to get used to it, and on different tables it'll bounce a little harder or not. So that's why I say typically stick to the main 3 options, and add these ones once in a while, but don't try to overuse them. But this, it is a great pass to go off the wall like that. The other techniques that I wanted to show you is that when you're going and setting up, it's okay. You have 2 walls that you can use, and I recommend that you use them, because you can go here, set up, go off the wall, and then also get a read off of that. So if I'm here and I get a read, then I can go to an up I can brush up or I can brush down. So if I'm here and I see that, okay, you know, maybe the brush lane is there, and I go to the wall and I do another little fake here, and I can go lane again if it's still open. Or again, you can change it up. If you go here, put a fake, read it, then go back down. Or you know, you just use those walls. I mean, you can use, you can get very creative. Go here, go no, go second wall, and then go back and reset. And then after that, maybe take a timeout. But if I want to do here, wall, wall, and then go down, and next time say wall, wall, and then go up, then you can kind of mix it in like that. So it's okay to stick to your main series most of the time, but if you see that something might be open, you know, rather than maybe going back and setting up, use the wall to kind of reset, and you know, and then use the pass that you want.